Okay, a brief outline of how this is going to unfold today. I'm going to give the panelists 5 to 8 minutes to talk about their journey in professional writing, where they got started, where they went. After they sort of talk to us for 5 to 8 minutes, then we're going to have a Q&A session, question and answer. And as I understand it, we need to wrap that up at 5 till the hour. Probably 10 till, but if we go to 5 till, it'll be okay. All right. So, yeah, let me give a quick introduction to our panelists, if that's okay. So I'll start with Christy. Christy began her career, I think, as a technical writer. Is that right? Began as a technical writer?
Instructional designer.
Instructional designer, excuse me. She went on to serve as president of Vision Corp for over 20 years, leading teams that created high-quality content for a range of client products. She then transitioned to the academic director of Monuments. Timothy Robinson, two over, has had a professional career very varied, including roles as managing director of international communications, vice president of communications, chief marketing officer, and CEO. Timothy currently is the CEO of Brainy Marketing Group, the FCMO at Chirp, and CMO at Change LLC, and the strategic marketing advisor at PQ. Did I do okay with the name of those companies? Yeah. Nick has worked in a number of diverse, Nick Scholes over here has worked in a number of diverse roles, including creative director and writer, technical writer, and solutions marketing manager. Nick is currently the senior product marketing manager at Bamboo HR and the narrative director at Deseret Games Studio. Very exciting. Alan, finally, is our anchor, I guess. He is actually the anchor. Has spent 20 years at Microsoft. He began as a training manager and later served as the design director, overseeing large-scale projects involving platforms such as Instagram, Facebook, and Xbox, some things we may have heard of. His most recent work as a design, he has most recently worked as a design director at a small company called Meta, which I've also heard of. So we'll now give our panelists time to speak, and then we'll proceed in this order. Christy, followed by Timothy, then Nick, and finally Alan.
Was an English major at BYU and graduated and started working for a company back in the day, a long time ago, you may have never heard of it, called WordPerfect. And this was back in the day of DOS. This is kind of aging me, but everybody was just learning about this new world of home computing. And because I could write, I got put in the training department to create training for WordPerfect products, and then was sent out doing training. And so my career just kind of evolved. It wasn't intentional. I didn't have a master plan. I was just looking for opportunities. And so I started creating training and doing training. And then when WordPerfect was acquired by Novell, they had a formal education department. And in that department, I managed the development of WordPerfect education products and instructional design work. And then I had my first child. And I intended to just come home and be a mom. That was kind of my master plan. But as WordPerfect and Novell started shifting and their fortunes started to decline, it created this technological diaspora. And all of these companies, people started leaving WordPerfect and Novell and creating their own companies, and everybody needed to have writing for the products. And so I started getting all of these calls for people who wanted either training developed or writing for various things. And so I started picking up side gigs, working at home, and then I got to the point that I couldn't do it. And so I started recruiting other people who had been writers who were part of this diaspora who wanted to work from home and have flexibility. And so I had a team of people all over the United States, actually. I had people on the East Coast, I had people up in Washington, and we worked virtually because you could do that with private networks, VPNs, etc., connecting to servers and writing documentation for our clients. And I did that for 20 years, and it was an exciting place to be and offered me a lot of flexibility while I was raising my family. All of my team was able to work from home. We did on-site visits, and we worked with our clients that way. I've recently transitioned back to education, and I've been working in education for about 8 years now. And so I'm kind of a little anachronistic as far as technical writing goes, but in the education field, and this is something that I'm hoping my fellow panelists will address. When I got into technical writing, there was this huge wave of home computing, and it was changing the world. The next wave that came was the internet. And I remember when there weren't browsers, you had to have an actual IP address to go to a server to see it. And there were these strange browsers, Alta Vista, all those crazy things. And that was the next wave that came. And we're on the precipice of the next wave with AI. And there's a lot of innovative things and opportunities that are going to open up for you. I'm sure you've heard that people who are being hired now at these companies are English majors, and they are working on large language models, and they are query designers and things like that. And so there is a lot of opportunity out there as this next technology wave changes everything once again. So I'm excited for you all.
Okay, so I made an infographic resume right before AI made it so that nobody reads resumes anymore. So totally a wasted effort, but I get to show it on this slide. So you can kind of see some of the stuff that I've done. The gray here is BYU, undergraduate, graduate. Actually, that's before my mission, after my mission, and then there's graduate. So I started at Bantam Doubleday. I just went to New York after my undergraduate experience, and I got a job with a temp agency to be secretarial help at Bantam Doubleday, which then shortly thereafter became Random House. I just told everybody, I want to work here. So if you have an assignment, give me the assignment. I want to prove my worth. And so I just started doing assignments for people, reading books, doing summaries. There was a guy named David Gale who kind of went to bat for me, and I got hired as an editorial assistant at Bantam Doubleday, and then Random House. After that, I moved over to Parachute Press. At Bantam Doubleday, I had edited these things called Choose Your Own Adventure books. Has anyone ever heard of those? Anyway, so it was at Parachute Press was running this factory called Goosebumps, and they were producing all these Goosebumps books. Each one would sell 1 million copies. And so I went over there, and I had the great honor of creating Give Yourself Goosebumps, which was the Choose Your Own Adventure for Goosebumps. Anyway, I worked there for about a year. Interesting, I was the only man at the company, 14 women. I'd walk in the conference room and they'd all stop laughing. They would talk about decisions they'd made in the women's room. It was classic reverse discrimination type stuff. Came back and got my master's degree in English literature. I did not learn my lesson. I love literature. I studied American literary theory. And then I wanted to go back to New York, but I got snagged by a different book. I was an editorial director there, e-publishing director. I won't run through the rest of it, but I basically pivoted to social media and communication strategies, digital strategies, storytelling. It's still publishing, it's just micro-publishing, telling stories in different types of formats. So, as he said, I currently split my time between a couple. FCMO means fractional. Does anyone know what that means? So that means that they don't have you full-time. So I run the team, but I'm only there 3 days a week. The other 2 days a week I focus on my own growing businesses, and also I do a lot of AI services for a bunch of companies. Right now I'm spending a lot of time with Sensory Flavors and One Chance to Grow Up, which is an organization out of Colorado that's trying to help build regulations to protect young people from the effects of marijuana as it's being legalized throughout the country. AI. Excuse me. AI is definitely taking over everything. This is probably not a good thing. There are probably brain cells going away because I'm doing this, and there's something really to be said for what they call SHITTY, first drafts and zero drafts, and the hard work of pulling together all of the information into one spot. I don't write those anymore. I have AI write those for me, and then I edit them. There's a lot of selection and editing that has to go into that. But these are a couple different ways that I'm using AI, since that's what we're focusing on today. This is Zapier. Does anyone know Zapier? So it's just an AI engine, an API engine, I should say. It connects with all these different applications. So I have this 24-step application for One Chance to Grow Up that's going out and reading all the news stories about marijuana and youth and teens. And then it goes to this platform. This is the API at ChatGPT or Open AI. And there you can read the prompt there about being an assistant. And it generates for us, on the left, every day, 15, 16 different stories just pour in with summaries and suggested social media posts with emojis, with the source, the link, the author, and its relevance. You can see extremely relevant, very relevant. So the AI is doing all that kind of analysis. And then we turn that into not just, I don't do it, but the team takes these and does daily communications on the different social media platforms. But then we also produce a brief that comes out every week that kind of tells you what's happening. So you can see in Texas, Ohio, Florida, Arizona, Kentucky. Those links, that's created by AI. Has to be edited, has to be fact-checked, has to be reworked, has to be selected, has to go through and make sure that all the different things that are being said are relevant and what we want to focus on. But a lot of the drafting is being done by machine. Here's another example. I do a lot of kind of newsmaker interviews where I'll go to, say, a lobbyist in Washington, D.C., and I'll interview them, get an hour and a half of tape of that. I call it tape, so that shows how old I am. Right? I record them on my phone. I transcribe that, right? So here you have Tim and Henny talking about these various different things, and then I'll go to Claude Anthropic's model, which I think is the best for language, and just start working the system. It's not automatic. Give me an outline, start working the outline, start producing drafts, and then you start editing those drafts, putting in links, creating a document that can be shared. So my best, let's talk about this in a second. My best analogy for AI is that AI is like prefab houses. So there are a lot of new systems to create prefab walls and cinder blocks and all these different things that used to happen. But that doesn't mean that we don't need architects and interior designers and all the people that are doing that important work. So what does an interior designer do? They select, they look at all the materials and they select and what's the best couch and how is this going to get you where you want to go. We still need topical authority maps. We still need SEO, but it's called GEO, which is what's behind me. And we still need people who can edit and communicate. The AI doesn't know what the relationships are between the words. It just has mathematical patterns. So it's going to be read by other AIs, that's going to happen. But the relationships are where you come in, right? What does this mean? What is the direction? What needs to be communicated? I brought all my old books because the best thing I got out of an English degree is a love of books. And those are some of my favorite books that I've read over the last couple of years. Off to the right are a couple ones I wrote. I've written 15 books. The life of books and of reading and of ideas is a fulfilling one, whether or not you're able to make money at it, but most of you can probably do both. This is just really quickly to point out that GEO, so generative engine optimization, is like SEO, but look at the fact that it places an emphasis on authoritative references, adding statistics where possible, including direct quotations from authorities, simplifying language, proper grammar, use of technical terms where appropriate, highlighting key information, adding clues for content and contextualization. That's more people involved, right? You gotta quote authorities. How does the AI know what's good information? When it sees that people are involved. Authorities, people who know things, not just regurgitated information. These guys might contradict me, but hopefully they'll reinforce me on that. So I think there's a bright future. If you know language, if you know how to talk to machines, just start talking to them and seeing what you get. They're good at some things, they're terrible at other things. Start figuring out which ones are good at what, and I think you have a bright future.
It's funny, I don't think that I have met any of my fellow panelists before. Maybe in one time before. But other than that, what's funny though is that I find these connections really, really fast. My first job out of college was as a technical writer at Novell. And so, you know, what ground Chrissy had broken as she was starting off in her career, that's something that I stepped into that path that was already, you know, well-worn and taken care of and probably made a whole lot easier by all the work that she was doing. My current role now is in product and solutions marketing, which means that I'm probably doing a lot of the downstream stuff that, you know, we just barely heard about here. And so being able to kind of see as the connections build up, I think is really interesting. So as a product and solutions marketer, what that really means is that it's my job at the company that I'm currently at, Bamboo HR. The last company I was at was a place called Cinequa. It was a company from Paris. My job was to be the authority on what our customers thought, who they were, what they cared about. And so that meant understanding a lot about the messages that resonated with them. It meant understanding a whole lot about what kind of people they were. I'm a big fan. One time I heard someone say that product marketing is an art and a science, and I'm a really big fan of that interpretation. I think that big, new, incredible tools like we have with large language models and AI in general, a lot of that is about the science. The piece that I also put a heavy emphasis on is the art. When I make my personas, what we call personas, right? These are the things that we disseminate through the entire 2,000-person company to help people understand who it is that we're really trying to talk to. I personally like to put things in there that aren't just, what's their job title? Are they a director? You know, my current job would be like, are they an HR director or a payroll administrator? That's great. I also like to understand, though, what do they do when they're not working in HR? These are human beings, and human beings need to be spoken to like human beings. So we have this big mixture of things. If we can find the data, I like to know if they are the kinds of people who tend to go on hikes on the weekend. I like to understand if they have a big investment in Game of Thrones or Severance. There's a less dated reference for you, Severance. I like to understand what it is that they're doing because these are all human beings. Tools like AI, more generalized tool like Gemini or ChatGPT, or more specific tools like some of the API stuff that we've seen here, these can all be really useful in helping you understand that. Just today, I used we have a really pro AI kind of initiative at Bamboo HR. And just today, I did exactly what we just heard about. I used it to create an outline for a creative brief that I was putting together for a video that we're going to create for a big new package that we're introducing. A bunch of new features and functionality and everything. What it spits out is not going to be the final thing that we use. But anyone here who knows anything about writing is familiar with the blank page problem. I hate the blank page problem. It drives me crazy because I want to start out as strong as I possibly can, and I'm always staring at a blank page and saying, okay, well, I don't want to put anything down until I know where it is I'm going. That is one of the most basic, awesome uses that I've found, is just to get something down so that you can start refining it. And you get better and better, like with every tool that you have, you get better and better at figuring out what kinds of prompts get the kinds of responses you get. So maybe there's less refinement. I was very fortunate in my last position at Cinequa. It was an enterprise search system. So imagine like Google, but inside of your company, connected to all of your data sources so that you can search and find amongst the bajillions of documents that you have. You're going to lose stuff in there. This was designed to help you pull that out. And at the time I was there is when generative AI really hit, right? That's when we suddenly heard everything about it. And of course, that is something that we either had to respond to, react to, and make changes, or pretend didn't exist. Luckily, we didn't pretend that it didn't exist, and I was the marketing guy in charge of figuring out how we were going to fold those messages together and take AI into our current new tool. I remember when I first started out with it, I would probably only save 10 or 15% of what the large language model spat out for me. But it got me past the blank page. Now, I think that the tools are getting better, but I also think I'm getting better at figuring out how to query it correctly, and I probably save 30, 40% of what is coming out of there. These are all just things that come along with practice, but your involvement as human beings in checking the facts, in understanding what the message should really be, and at least from the art side of this, from knowing the story you really want to tell, because human beings connect to stories, that is where your greatest value is going to be. You are not going to lose a job to AI, in my opinion. You're going to lose a job to the person who knows how to use AI. It's just another tool. I'll tell you one experience on my way here that I had really quickly that helped, I think, underline this for me. So I was on a call using a Zoom. So I was just doing a video call. But I left my house as I was going out, and all of a sudden, there started to get latency between me and the person I was talking to, right? This is great technology. I can actually do video. I can share my screen. I have much clearer voice. But as I was driving, you know what was the thing that saved me there? It wasn't the brand new technology. It was that in that exact moment, I didn't need video sharing. I didn't need the super clear voice or the screen sharing. I needed less latency. I needed the conversation to feel like it was real time, so there wasn't a 10-second delay between what we're saying. And what saved me was 40-year-old infrastructure in a cell phone tower, and I just gave them a quick call. These are just tools. Even older tools are going to have their place. Their place is going to become different, it's going to change, but it's your job to get out there and figure out where these fit, how they help you be a better human and do more great work. That's exactly what your challenge is, and I think that it's a really, really exciting time because you guys are going to be able to do more than any of us ever hoped or dreamed to be able to do before.
So I'm Alan Tire, and if you're looking at how my name's spelled, it's just pronounced like the tire on your car. And I graduated right here from BYU and started my first job at WordPerfect with Christy. So we go way back. I've had the opportunity to work in a field called content design for some of the biggest companies, including Microsoft and Meta, and been able to help design products like Xbox and Windows and Facebook and Instagram and even MetaQuest. So it's been a very exciting career. Most people ask me, so what is content design? I don't get it. Content design is critical because it's how we use words to help people achieve whatever they want to do inside of digital software. So my job is to go in and figure out how to make things simple, straightforward, and human. How do I use voice and tone to help customers do what they want to do as quickly as possible? How do I use information architecture to structure words and systems of words in ways that just instantly make sense? And most of the time, you find where the problems are first, and then you go in as a content designer and fix those. Let me give you a real example of how content design works. So at one company that I worked for that does advertising, if your ad was taken down for any reason by that company, there was no way to contest it. Your ad was just gone. It just didn't run. So the decision was made, hey, let's put in a way to contest ads. You bring in the engineers, you bring in the product designers. When your ad's taken down, they decided we're going to put a button there that says appeal, which sounds great, simple. And when you press that button, it brings up this text box, and it's just going to be simple, and it's just going to say something like, state your appeal, and you type in what you want, and you hit submit. That sounds great, doesn't it? The problem is, as content design, my team came in, and we use real data to see how many people are actually using this appeal process. And the reality is very few were. So I knew something was wrong. So with content design, we spend time actually going to be with customers and watch how they use things. And it became very apparent that when people were finding that their ad wasn't running and they got this opportunity to appeal, they literally felt like they were instigating some sort of legal action against this company. And then the few that actually clicked that appeal button and got the box that said state your appeal, they literally thought that they had to go hire a lawyer to state some sort of appeal before they could submit it. So most people never did that at all. So the key thing here is words matter. They really do. Words matter. So my content design team, we looked at this and we thought, okay, we know what people are thinking, feeling, and doing at each moment in this process. How do we make words and voice and tone in a way that allows the customer to achieve what they want as quickly as possible? And we decided we're going to replace appeal with request review. And we thought, we'll just put a little statement below that that says, if you think we've made a mistake, request review and we'll take another look. When you press that button, instead of getting this box you have to fill out, through data, we already know the top 10 challenges that people are having with advertising. We could just put bullets in there and people can just select the ones that they're having and hit submit. Suddenly, everybody is requesting reviews. We're finding more ads are running, which means customers are happy. More ads are running, which means the business is happy. So content design is all about figuring out how do we use words to help people accomplish what they want to do in the quickest way possible. And it's really, really powerful. Most companies, at least tech companies, start out with engineers. You have to, you only have 5 people, they better be engineers producing something. And then there comes a day when they realize, oh, we're getting all these challenges happening, we better go hire designers. And they do, they hire product designers, which is great. But I'm finding more and more companies are now realizing we need content designers. We need people who really understand language, systems of words, and really know how to use them to help customers. So what does the future hold? The future, I believe, holds a lot more jobs in content design, which is great. And mostly we hire English and journalism majors because we're looking for people who really have a handle on language and voice and tone. And then next is AI. AI is here to stay. Embrace AI. AI is a tool, and I use it every single day. And third, if you haven't embraced conversation design yet, learn about conversation design, because more and more things are changing to our voice. And we need to have experts with content to figure out how do you do conversation design? How do you craft appropriate responses? How do you even ingest what someone's spoken and figure out what their real intent is? Could they say, change my view? They might. Could they say, change the landscape? They might. If they were an engineer, engineers actually call that a skybox. Change my skybox. So there's all sorts of things we have to look at now in the world of conversation design because more and more things are changing to the spoken voice. So I think you all have exciting careers ahead of you, and there's so many things that you can do with a degree from BYU. So thanks for letting us come.
We'll jump right into the Q&A. We'll take about 15 to 20 minutes for you all to ask them questions. So does anyone want to start us off?
Does technical writing and content writing ever overlap with each other?
Does technical writing and content writing ever overlap with each other?
Well, to take the first crack at that, the reason I have a job in marketing right now is because I was a technical writer. The ability to be specific, to be clear, and my love of understanding things on a technical level is actually what took me from being in technical writing to doing product marketing, because a lot of it is about that clarity. It's a little bit more storytelling, absolutely, but there's plenty of overlap in those skills, and there's plenty of reason to be able to jump between the two of them if that's what you want to do. But yeah, absolutely.
I was never a technical writer. I got the literature degree, came back and studied literature. I've never really encountered technical content. It's always just content, right? Companies need content. They need video content, they need social media content, they need long-form content. I don't know if that's how that works with you.
I found as a professional writer, you do whatever the business needs, to be really blunt. And depending on the size of the business, there's many times I've been both a technical writer and a content designer at the same time. And what I really try to focus on myself is the user journey. what is the journey that customer's on, and how do I help them through that journey? So for example, when I've done technical things like for developers, there is a user experience that they need on websites and things like that, and there is some information architecture, but they also need a lot of technical content. And so I found sometimes you do both jobs, sometimes you do one or the other. As was previously said, I got my break in content design from my work in technical writing and instructional design. And that's what led to that break.
So my take on it was, if you're a good technical writer, you're doing content design. Because you're presenting, you're strategic. You're not just writing what's happening. Content design, as I view it, is you are being deliberate and intentional on how you're presenting information so that it is more likely to be understood by your target audience. And when you're writing for developers, you're creating it entirely differently than you would do it for, say, an average end user. So in my view, you're always doing content design when you're doing any kind of writing.
So the question is, how would their roles overlap with editing?
With AI, it's just editing, right? It's producing a zero draft, and you're having to edit and select and refine and push. So I think editorial skills are never in more demand, and that's kind of where I came from. I came from the editorial track, and so I think that is a critical thing to develop.
Ditto.
Editing is really a critical skill to have. I am finding that, at least in the world of software design,
Alan, come this way so you're not stretched.
Yeah, come and hang out with us.
Thank you.
Can we be friends?
Okay. I am finding in the world of software design, English is very much a living entity and a living language. And we have to take into consideration a lot of different things if we're going to help customers achieve what they want to achieve. So for example, I recently helped someone who needed to actually collect information on date of birth. And that's a sensitive thing to collect, and many times people are reluctant to give their date of birth. And it is grammatically correct to say, when's your birthday? But when we do research on using when's your birthday versus what's your birthday actually has a friendlier voice and tone, and more people are actually willing to give you their birthday. So I'm finding that I have to use my editing skills, but there are times I also have to say what is really going to be in the best use for the customer. I'm also finding that, at least with software design, I have to write at like a grade level of 6. And college is fabulous, but college often teaches us to write at 11th or 12th grade levels. And just think about being inclusive, because worldwide, lots of people speak English and it's not their first language. And you don't, at least in software, you don't want people analyzing what is it they want, what does that really mean? And so it's not dumbing down things, it's figuring out how do you be crystal clear and as simple as possible.
So the question is, where should we start getting experience for jobs in the future?
Internships. There's an internship office, and companies are constantly coming to BYU and looking for free or low-cost help, and so that's a great way to jump in.
So I just told my own daughter, she goes to a company that she really thinks they have a fantastic product, but they have a terrible social media presence. And I said, go in and tell them, ask if you can help them, just volunteer. Say, you know what, I would love to do some writing for you to help you get out there, to have you consistent messaging, your appearance, your language, and just offer to help little companies that you like and products that you like, and then you can represent that on your resume.
I would definitely echo that, and I would add from my personal experience that once again, going from technical writer to At the time, it was global product marketing manager for about $300 million worth of product. That happened because I was a technical writer. I made friends with our marketing person because what they did sounded really fun and interesting. And I started taking on, I knew that they had bandwidth limitations, and I liked doing some creative stuff as well as my more technical stuff. And so I said, is there anything I can do? Can I write a script? Can I put together, one-sheets that you guys don't have bandwidth for? If you guys search really hard on YouTube, you'll find me doing voiceover stuff for some of the videos they had because they didn't have a voiceover artist to come in and do it. It's not good, but it's there. So you can branch out from any place that you're at, and that includes an internship, an entry-level job, or just finding places that you see where someone could use a lift, that they need a little bit of help.
And that's consistent with my first job in New York, right, where I was just asking everybody, what can I do? How can I get a job here? So wherever you go, just start asking everybody, what do you need help with? How can I be helpful? What can I learn? What do I need to do? Curiosity is really your best friend.
If you're interested in writing for software user experience, portfolio is essential. And you want to create that portfolio right now while you're here at BYU. And the portfolio can be things you've done in your classes, but it can also be, like Christy was saying, it can be stuff you've just volunteered to do in the community. There are a lot of tech companies here that you can just volunteer for, or become friends with people in the computer science department. Find out what they're coding and make it better. Because the best part of a portfolio is you can say, this is what it was, and here's how I made it impactful. It doesn't have to be something you ship to millions of people. What people are looking for is, does your portfolio show mastery of the craft? And your craft is words. And so that's what you really want to focus on.
I'll say maybe anyone else has this experience and they may not. I knew somebody. I knew someone who they weren't super high up in the company or anything, but they said, hey, I know this guy, he just graduated from college, he's a good writer, just give him a chance, give him an interview, and that's how I became a technical writer. And the same thing happened when I became a marketer, is someone left and said, I know this is crazy, when you're looking for my replacement, just give this guy down in engineering just one chance, just give him an interview. I think he helps us with a lot of stuff, I think he could do it. So honestly, look at your network and don't feel bashful about asking, because you know a lot more people than you think you do who will go to bat for you, because they care about your well-being and they love the skills that you have.
I did whatever I needed to have a job. I'll be blunt, I started by renting cars. It wasn't what I wanted to do with my life, so I started volunteering at these small companies. I remember helping like a septic tank company and stuff, because they're just these mom and pop shops. But I was persistent in continuing to ask for opportunities at other companies, and it eventually led to me, getting a break and getting hired somewhere. But it takes persistence. I think Christy's suggestion of small companies is key.
There isn't, sadly, a career track in the same kind of way that you'll find, the mechanical engineers and those people who are coming out. The other challenge you'll face, by the way, is that every single person on the planet communicates, and every single person on the planet thinks of themselves as creative. So you get to a company, and now the CEO has ideas about how it should be said and how things should look, because I communicate, I'm a communicator, right? And so people who are graduating from mechanical engineering don't face that, right? It's like, the CEO's not saying, I'm a mechanical engineer on the side. So you kind of face that opposition. You have to be very assertive and about your own skills and your own abilities, and about what the difference is between professional representation of these skills and your own hobbyist approach to communication.
One other really quick question, circling back to the AI relationship, something Tim and Nick brought up. Tim mentioned the risk of losing brain cells, right?
Yes.
And Nick talked about bringing the art. I'm just curious if you've never struggled with the blank page problem with producing an SHITTY draft.
Yeah.
are you then able to bring that refining ability,
I don't know.
that kind of higher order function, or do you need to, you acquire the competencies through the struggle?
Did everyone hear that question in the back? No? So he asked, if you're not doing a zero draft, you're not struggling with the information to come up with the initial draft, do you have the skills to do the refinement part? And they're actually beginning to study that. There are a couple of studies that have just gone out to try and see what the impact of this kind of daily use of AI and relying upon these tools is, and whether that's taking away certain cognitive abilities. So I think we'll have to kind of see as we go. We're all first generation for AI, so those of us that are doing it have struggled with that empty blank page and had to kind of come up with that understanding. I'm a huge fan, here's one of my words that I love, disfluency. Has anyone ever heard that word before? Disfluency. So disfluency is the power and strength that comes with struggling and being slow. Have you ever heard, be slow to go fast? You heard that before? That's sometimes said in companies, be slow to go fast. In other words, if you go too fast, you skip everything and you don't learn what you need to learn to be agile, to be quick. And so disfluency is, for example, I was working for an educational technology company in ed tech, and they found that the teachers who took the sticky notes and wrote information on them and put them on the wall and studied them and looked at each student were having better results than the ones using the software, because the software made it so easy that they didn't actually know what the circumstances of the kids were. And so they weren't able to call upon their intuition to how to help those kids. So there's something about disfluency, even though we have all these technical skills and tools that help us, struggling with the problem is actually really, really useful. We probably have something to say about that.
I actually do my own drafts, so I don't use AI for drafts. That's just me personally. But I always use AI because it allows me to just say, give me 5 variations on this, or rephrase this in 5 words, or rewrite this for a 5th grade level, and so I find it really helps. But I'm one of those people who likes to start the creation, and then I use artificial intelligence to improve it and make it better. So I think each of you will find the way that AI works for you. I think the key is to embrace it, though. Try different things. Find what works for you. But you don't want to throw out the calculator or Google search or any technology. We want to use all the tools that we have to really make words matter.
And even that query is a first draft, right? As you're typing in a long, long query to get what you want out of AI, that's a first draft.
And the only thing I'd add is not every project is made equal. Not every project needs AI. Like I told you guys, I use it at Bamboo HR often, especially with the amount of work that we've been having to do lately with all these big things we're doing. I don't use it at all in writing the video game. That to me is a lot more about me telling a story and having that narrative exactly the way that I want it and exactly the words that I want it to be. It's a hammer in a toolbox, and some problems aren't nails. So it's completely fine for you guys, like they're saying, to just kind of feel that out and figure out what fits, what works, when you need it and when you don't.